This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! Whoa, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
A day after arguably the most pitiful Eagles loss since 2016, we are sitting here with a pitiful Eagles team still leading the division. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We got a lot of NFL and football to get to this hour. Of course, we got accountability on the picks a little bit later in the hour. If you caught the podcast on Friday night, of course, if you miss any Game Night, you can catch it on the website after the show that night at 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. We'll be talking NFL and the Masters over the weekend. Reid Fowler rejoins us today, coming up at 6:20 from DraftKings. We'll talk more about the weekend in the NFL and Dustin Johnson winning the Masters. Before we get to anything else, before I get to you my thoughts on the game last night, we do have the news up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. The Eagles are activating Zach Ertz's practice window, which means that he will be allowed to start practicing this week. Not a guarantee he's going to play anytime soon, but interestingly enough, the team did make a corresponding move, and it kind of looks like either Ertz and or Seumalo will be activated to the official roster later this week. Catch the full update and information right now at 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. But not even Zach Ertz, returning or not returning or whatever really is going on with him, is going to solve the problems for this Eagles team. And that is, I'm watching the game yesterday, and it's very ironic that Jason Kelce had about 4 horrible snaps yesterday. Because remember, after they won the Super Bowl, he yelled, "It's the whole team," right? And when I immediately saw the poll at 97.3 ESPN on Twitter, I had to retweet it, and I had to comment. Because the poll question asked you, who do you blame more? Well, the person who won the poll is Doug Pederson, 47.6%. Carson Wentz at 13, Jim Schwartz at 12. 27 said blame all. Well, I'm with the blame all crowd because it's really the whole team. Now, the buck stops with Pederson because the team should be much more prepared and much better off coming out of a bye. But to place any level of blame way more on one person versus the other at this point, I think is a dereliction of responsibility. You cannot ignore that if it wasn't for Jason Kelce's horrible snaps, or a couple guys dropping passes, or Wentz just holding on to the ball for dear life for too long, again for the 200th millionth time, or the lack of adjustments at halftime. How do you come out of halftime without any adjustments made? It was incredible. It was so pathetic how horribly they did adjusting. And for me, that's why I said the buck stops with Pederson, but I blame everybody. And the reason I say the buck stops with Pederson is because Doug's the head coach. Doug's the man who faces the music. Doug is the one who gets up in front of the media. And when you think about Doug is the kind of coach who likes to claim, I take responsibility. He likes to go up with the whole mantra about, team first, blah, blah, blah. Well, the problem is now Doug has been saying that kind of mantra. Doug has put forth this team-oriented concept now since he got hired. From 2016 to now, Doug Pederson has been preaching this message. All right? He's been getting up in front of the symbolic pulpit of the media press conferences for now 5 years. And you have a guy in Doug Pederson who, let's be realistic, as a former player, he has a certain style of presenting himself. As a former quarterback, he has a certain way of looking at the game, explaining the game. But that's all coming back to bite him now because now when he's asked questions about these things, when he's pressed on these issues, when he's asked to explain himself, As you heard the press conference earlier today on the Sports Bash, we played the Doug Pederson presser as we do each and every Monday the day after at 2:30 on 97.3 ESPN. He sounded like a snarky, snappy, kind of a moody individual because he didn't like some of the questions. And they are all valid questions. Hey, Doug, what's your assessment of your play calling? Hey, Doug, do you feel anybody differently today than you did yesterday? Hey, Doug, what is your assessment of your quarterback? What is your assessment of Jalen Hurts? Doug, how do you feel about, and you fill in the blank with these questions, and it's like Doug doesn't want to answer these questions. Listen, I know it's not fun to get up there and have to handle the bullets coming at you. But I loved how the one media member, and I forget who asked it, said, well, Doug, the fan base feels this way. What is your answer to it? And his answer, frankly, it was about Jason Peters and Jordan Mailata, because the question was asked, Doug, the fan base, they really love Jordan Mailata, and you got him on the bench, and you got Jason Peters at tackle. Why don't you ever kick Jason Peters in the guard and put Mailata at tackle? And the answer is, well, Jason Peters, he's played a good job. He's doing well. He's the rhythm of the game. We don't want to change something that's working and all this stuff. And he doesn't really answer the question, because Doug, for all of his positive qualities that helped lead this team to win a Super Bowl, that helped lead this team to 2 straight postseason appearances in the years after making it to the Super Bowl and winning that Super Bowl ring, the flip side of those positive traits is also the fact that Doug has this idea that he knows better than everybody else. Not in an egotistical way, but in a I've lived and seen a lot of football kind of way. And frankly, this is what you get. See, when you win a championship, when somebody shows you a certain level of skill and ability, when somebody puts forth their best foot, you expect them to continue. There is a level of expectation that has been brought to the city of Philadelphia by the Eagles winning a Super Bowl. And when I was listening to Mike Gill and Hunter Brody go back and forth, and the callers on Anytime Hotline and the texters at 609-403-0973 today, as I'm listening to everything going on today, all I kept hearing was passion, frustration, but that passion and frustration doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes from a level of expectation. It comes from a place of anticipation. It comes from this idea that I know you are better. I know you can do better. I have high expectations of you. And when you don't meet those expectations, I'm going to express myself. And I don't think that it is anything that should be minimalized or overlooked, that if Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz didn't have the success that they did in the past, we wouldn't be as upset as we are, because our expectations wouldn't be there. Look at other markets. It's not just because Philadelphia is a passionate fan base, and let's be realistic. Philly fans are more passionate than the majority of sports fan bases across the country. But what makes him different, what makes Pederson and Wentz and the Eagles and everything going on with Philadelphia different, is how many other of these cities have won championships? The Rams got to a Super Bowl. The Falcons got to a Super Bowl. They didn't win it. So the expectation for them might be a little bit different. One of the reasons why people such as myself get frustrated with Wentz is because we know that he has been handed the keys to the offense. We know that Wentz has been told, You're in charge. This is your game. This is your team. We know Wentz can audible in and out of play. We know he can make the magical play. We know he's capable of playing much better. In fact, it was just 2 years ago that Wentz was about 68% completion percentage. Now he's in the mid-50s. If Wentz didn't show us what he has, and if he wasn't given the responsibilities that he does, then we wouldn't be as critical of him. I don't criticize Jared Goff the same way I criticize Wentz because I know that Goff has Sean McVay in his ear almost the entire time in pre-snap leading up to the 12 or 10 seconds they have to cut him off before they snap the ball, because that's the NFL rule. You only can talk to the quarterback for a certain amount of time, then they cut off your headset. So I don't look at Jared Goff and I don't get as upset with him as I would with Wentz because I know he is not capable of doing certain things. So when I look at Carson Wentz, I look at Doug Pederson, I look at this whole team, Jason Kelce's the whole team, right? Never get that thing out of our minds, whether you are a fan of it or not. It's, burned into our memories. I personally enjoy Jason Kelce's speech, but that was just me. The whole team played horribly yesterday. And to leave anybody less culpable than anybody else, I just can't do it. I just can't get away with it. I just can't walk away from it. Because when you win a Super Bowl and when you have the success that you have and you're coming off of bye week and almost everybody's back and healthy and you go out there and you put up that kind of garbage, if you're not complaining, if you're not upset, if you're not disappointed, if you're not frustrated, I'm worried about you. Because you can't watch that Eagles game and see the lack of adjustments at halftime, the horrible snaps, the mediocre play on the offensive line, the inconsistencies from Carson Wentz, the lack of just communication on offense and defense, the missed assignments on defense, the poor tackling, everything that goes into it. For this team to play the way they did yesterday coming off a bye is inexcusable. And so on one hand, I blame everybody, but I also say it all falls at the feet of the head coach. Because everything that Doug Pederson told us for the last 4+ years, they didn't do yesterday. Everybody failed. And for Doug Pederson to come out today and be snarky and be, borderline flippant, he's asked about Jalen Hurts. Hey, in New Orleans, they use Taysom Hill like this. Is that something you thought about with Jalen Hurts? Doug Pederson says, that's a good idea. We'll look into that. That's a horrible answer, Doug, because it makes you look like an idiot. And again, it gets back to what I said last week, perception with this organization. And when you give those kind of answers, Doug, you're putting out a perception that you're indifferent to what people are saying. Nobody has it all figured out. Nobody is above anybody else in this foray. And for Doug Pederson and the Eagles, as I said last week, and I'll run it back for you one more time, perception is reality. And if Doug and everybody else in this team doesn't understand the perception of them, then they need to take a good look at themselves in the mirror and understand that whatever they're doing is not working. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. ThePlaySugarHouse.com text board is open at 609-403-0973. We get to your text in just a bit. I want to remind you that Game Night is being brought to you by weightliftinghq.com. Look, folks, whether you're a person who's a fitness enthusiast, whether you're a hardcore gym goer, or you're someone who just wants to get back in shape, weightliftinghq.com is right here for you in South Jersey. They're a local company right here that operates fully online and caters the weightlifters and fitness enthusiasts who are interested in working out from home. They offer high-end weightlifting and fitness equipment available delivered right to your home, and they set it up for you, whether it's bench and squat racks, kettlebells, dumbbells, cardio and fitness machines, or accessories like heart rate sensors, fitness watches, resistance bands, and more. And like I said, whether you're someone who goes to the gym already, you want to supplement with some home workout routines, whether you're someone who is not ready to go back to the gym and you want to get started on your 2021 goals, or maybe you're someone whose gym got shut down and you don't know what to do. Even better, Christmas is right around the corner. It's November 16th. We are a month and 9 days away from Christmas. You know what that means? It's an opportunity for you to buy something for the person who you care about in your life, whatever the reason is. You cannot beat weightliftinghq.com's local customer service, their great delivery services, and incredibly competitive prices. So check them out at weightliftinghq.com and use the code radio10 at checkout. That's weightliftinghq.com with radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's radio10 at weightliftinghq.com. Coming up next, we'll talk with Reid Fowler from DraftKings about the Eagles, the NFC East, NFL Sunday, and the Masters. And, of course, we'll get to your text a little bit later this hour at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Welcome back to Game Night. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, it was a busy weekend. The Masters was this weekend. The NFL, a crazy day on Sunday. We'll talk more about it with me right now. He is Reid Fowler. You can follow him on Twitter at Reid T. Fowler for all your NFL and PGA analysis. All guests he appears on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Reid, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. So before we get to the Masters stuff, I got to touch on some of this NFL stuff with you. Before we get to the other stuff,
Sure.
All day, of course, we've been talking to NFL, and that Eagles loss yesterday, that's to be one of the most embarrassing things. I don't know what's more embarrassing for the Eagles right now. The fact they lost to the Giants the way they did, the fact that they lost and they're still in first place in the NFC East.
Yeah. Well, when you look before their bye, too, right? They didn't look anything special, or even they didn't even break par, I would argue, against the Cowboys. Right? It just seems like the Eagles right now have a lot to figure out. Carson Wentz is less reacting and more thinking, and you see this with a lot of quarterbacks when they're hitting this part of their career is. And you see it with golfers too, to kind of keep that going, that connection going, is that you try to, it's like the Jordan Spieth. I would argue that the Eagles are like the Jordan Spieth right now, where you're getting a little bit too much into your own head. What makes the Eagles great is that their defense is sound. They don't make big mistakes on defense. And their offense has key players like a Miles Sanders, Alshon Jeffrey in the past, Ertz in the past, that they rely on. And Carson Wentz is distributing. Carson Wentz right now, and he's been doing this throughout his career, is playing hero ball. And for right now, that's just not his game. That's not his game as a quarterback. And the Eagles, quite frankly, that's not how they're going to win games. And that's not they're doing enough, but it's not going to be enough when you get down to later in December.
If you right now had to sit on somebody and say, all right, I have at least a modicum of confidence, who is going to win the NFC East in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, right now, it has to be the Giants. And when I say has to be, it's because they've looked the best in division, right? Their only 3 wins have come 2 against the Washington football team and then against the Eagles last week. So when you take a look at this division specifically, they really hold the cards. Like, they lost to the Cowboys in week 5, the Giants did, but they're going to play a Dallas Cowboys team in week 17 that's going to look far different than what they faced back in week 5. And remember, they put up 34 against that Dallas team. Granted, that Dallas defense is bad, but that was also with a healthy Dak Prescott. So you look at the Giants and what Joe Judge and what these guys are doing right now, and Daniel Jones being able to run the ball. Guy looks like you think, what is he, 3rd or 4th in rushing yards to Kyler Murray and these guys up top who we know are rushing quarterbacks. Daniel Jones right now isn't playing outside of what either he's been asked to do or what he knows he's capable of doing. And that's right now where these quarterbacks sometimes get in trouble. And it's a game of inches. Look at the Cardinals game, right? We know Kyler Murray and D-Hop are fantastic, but that is a freak play. And it's a game of inches to where DeAndre Hopkins got an inch or two above the defenders and he caught that ball. Now, for him to get down there, have the confidence and the wherewithal to know that in his mind, he's got the best chance of catching this, that's completely different. But we know that this is a game of inches. And right now, a guy like Daniel Jones is proving that he's a quarterback right now for that team that's allowing them to win in division.
You mentioned Kyler Murray. He's got to be a front runner for MVP now, right? I mean, this is now a couple of weeks in a row where he's looked incredible. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks look like they're going in the opposite direction. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, but do you feel like Kyler Murray, he's got to be front runner now, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you start to take a look at, like, they've had some losses too that you early in the season, and that's when you want them, right? That you kind of look at it and you're saying, how did the Cardinals lose to this team, right? They beat Seattle. We know that Seattle's defense has been historically bad this year. But when you take a look at Arizona's early season schedule, they lost to the Lions in week 3, and then they lost to the Panthers, back-to-back losses. And so you thought, okay, Kyler Murray's, kind of facing this second-year slump. But then they go, 3 straight wins. They beat the Seahawks in overtime. They lose to Miami, and I would argue that's less Kyler Murray and the team, more Cliff Kingsbury managing the end of that game. And then they beat Buffalo on a last-second play. And so, you need some wins, I think, down the road to really solidify. But look at their schedule. You got Seattle coming up next for Arizona, the Patriots, the Rams, the Giants, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Rams. I mean, you could argue that they would win more games than not in that next, sort of second half schedule. And if that's the case, and Kyler Murray is still doing what he's doing, rushing for as much as he is and being extremely productive, yeah, he's got to be one of the front runners.
Reid Fowler joining me here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. You're on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Reid T. Fowler on Twitter for your NFL and PGA Tour analysis. We got 3 teams at 3-3 in the NFC West. As I mentioned, the Seahawks look like they're going in the wrong direction. The Rams, I mean, I don't think anybody would have thought they would be where they are right now, considering how bizarre the entire NFL year has been. But how do you kind of rate and grade those 3 teams all at 6-3 in the NFC West?
Yeah, I'm just not sure about the Rams. And even though they beat the Seahawks, that looks like a Seahawks team that just, and Russell Wilson was interesting if you watch that game, because I watched quite a bit of it. When he gets up to these cornerbacks like a Patrick Peterson, and in this case, Jalen Ramsey, if they're up against DK Metcalf, he does not even look their way. He totally takes away that half of the field. And if you're a defensive coordinator and you see that and you hone in on that, then, if Russell Wilson's going to keep on doing that, which I don't think he will, but if he keeps on showing that tendency, then all you really have to do is guard on one half of the field or match up against a guy like Tyler Lockett that we know can give us a 3-touchdown game, but also can be bottled up quite easily if you have the right scheme in place. And especially if you can get to Russell Wilson. This offensive line for Seattle, matched with their defense, is not allowing Russell Wilson to operate in the ways that we saw earlier in the season, right? He was able to really have a clean pocket and let these plays mature and see DK Metcalf go down the field. Now, I would argue that the way right now that Schottenheimer is using DK Metcalf in these type of games is incorrect. You have to get this guy the ball. If it's a bubble screen, if it's, a jet sweep, if it's something just to get him going, we know that he's a momentum guy. He's a team player, and he's going to put the team first. But you saw the frustration from DK Metcalf last week when he wasn't getting the ball, when he was beating Jalen Ramsey. So I'm a little worried about the Seahawks, and I'm also a little worried about the Rams. I do not know the identity of this team outside of they like to run the ball, and they like to hide Jared Goff as much as possible. That defense showed that they can really play. It's not just their easy schedule in that first half. So I would say the Cardinals right now are the one team to take a look because of that schedule, because I'm just not sure the Rams have the offensive power led by Jared Goff to really stick with it in this very, very tough NFC. And in the NFC West, I just think the Cardinals right now are the best team because of how just their talent is probably overriding their coaching foibles with Cliff Kingsbury.
Let's jump over to the AFC. I got to ask you about last night's Sunday Night Football game, because I think a lot of people are going to take away from that game that the Ravens, they're regressing. They're not what they used to be. Russell Wilson, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But are they really, like, I'm not fully sure if I'm 100% on board with this idea that the Ravens are all of a sudden a beatable team. I still think that they can be a very good team, but I think that it's just maybe one of those middle of the year lulls because, when you look at statistically, they're still one of the best teams in the league, but maybe it's not just always showing up each week on the win column.
Right, exactly. And this kind of goes in line, too, with what we're talking about with Russell Wilson, is that Lamar Jackson is being asked to do too much. And when you have 4 running backs, right, in your rotation, I believe in the backfield with Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Ingram, and Alex Collins, not Alex Collins, but when you have 3 running backs in the rotation, there's no real identity with what you're doing. And you don't have these possession receivers like you do in other places. You can't lean on Marquise Brown to take over a game. That's just not going to happen. And so when you're not factoring in what Lamar Jackson can do to win you a game, which is what was happening last season, then it becomes extremely hard. And then you have to put a lot of pressure on your defense. And if they're not getting to the quarterback, then it's going to be extremely hard. And that's what you saw last night with Cam Newton, is that he had time to operate and the offense had time to go down their sort of checklist on how to beat the Ravens. We know that the Patriots know how to beat the Ravens. We know Bill Belichick knows how to beat the Ravens. But I would argue, Josh, last year, Kansas City, earlier in the season, they won 4 straight, and then they had back-to-back losses to the Colts and the Texans. And then the next game they beat Denver, and then they lost again to the Packers. And a lot of people were saying, well, this is a 5-3 team. I don't really know if the Chiefs have it. And then the second half, they just went gangbusters, and they won every single game after their bye. I'm not saying that the Ravens are the 2019 Kansas City Chiefs, but I would trust that Harbaugh and these guys have the wherewithal to know and to adjust. We have to do something. Maybe get Mark Andrews more involved. Maybe rely on more of a 2-headed monster with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins to really confuse the defense, as opposed to telegraphing our plays. If Gus Edwards or Ingram are out, this is going to be a run up the gut. So those are just some really high level things that I think they can change. And I'm not too worried because Bill Belichick is one of the best against scheming like this and a player like this. And we've seen it before.
I got to ask you also about the Masters. Last time you and I talked, we had a lot of different things we were looking ahead to for the Masters, but I really felt like from Friday night into Saturday, it felt like Dustin Johnson was really taking a hold of this tournament. And the performance he played from Friday through Sunday, I think really exceeded a lot of people's expectations.
Yeah. I mean, when you get 20 under at Augusta, like, you deserve to win, right? Like, Dustin Johnson is far and away, when he has everything going, which is what we've seen in his career, right? He's had stretches where he's won in 3 out of 4 weeks, for instance. We've seen Dustin Johnson do this. Won the Tour Championship. Towards the end of the FedEx Cup playoffs, he was a guy to beat, and no one could beat him. And then he comes here, after COVID, after going through his 2 weeks of mandatory self-isolation and having that time to himself, saying that he had to stay in a hotel room for 11 days. He came out that next tournament, Houston Open, and he was great. I mean, he was, I believe, one of the highest in strokes gained tee to green on the weekend in terms of gaining strokes. And then he comes to Augusta, and you mentioned 65 to open up the tournament. Never did worse than a 70 in round 2. Shot 65, 68 on the weekends. And really, when you looked at Sunday, maybe 1 or 2 times you thought Cam Smith had to do everything perfect, and DJ had to maybe take a step back on 12, maybe put it in the water there. But no, like, DJ, he laid back when he needed to. He took his foot off the gas pedal when he needed to, and he made all the putts. That's the thing about Dustin Johnson that separates. This guy's got the distance. He's got the mentality to win majors. And when he's putting and when he's making those par putts, those 8-foot putts, there is no one right now on planet Earth that can beat him.
He's now got 2 majors under his belt. He's been the player of the year. What is next for him in terms of what he can elevate to? Because we know he's been tied and at second a couple of these other majors as well.
Yeah, when we think about best players, right now of the generation, Dustin Johnson is on the older side, right? He's mid to late 30s, I believe. Probably mid 30s if I had to guess, but he's like, who's in his generation, right? Like, I can't think of, because Rory and these guys, JT, they're a little bit younger than Dustin Johnson, so you would have to compare it a little bit to a guy like Jason Day, and like clearly he's the best guy in his generation. And what we've seen now from Dustin Johnson is that he can win on multiple courses. He can win at Harbour Town, RBC Heritage, a short par 70 coastal course. I think he can also take his talents to a longer track. And with his wedge play and his putter, he can win there as well. He can win in tough conditions. So for Dustin Johnson, when you start to take a look at his legacy, it's about winning the career Grand Slam. It's about winning all 4 majors and to really solidify himself as one of the best players to ever play the game, right? And be alongside some of the greats in terms of getting those Masters wins. It's a little bit different, right, than Super Bowl wins, for instance. Brady's got 6. How do you compare that to Tiger's 18, right? They're sort of apples and oranges in that extent. But we all say that Dustin Johnson only had 1 major, 20-plus career wins, and 1 major before this, now winning Augusta, even though it was in November. He's already surpassed what I think everyone thought of him to begin with. I think he's one of the best players to ever play the game, and to win more majors than he has right now is just going to solidify that.
He's Reid Fowler. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Reid T. Fowler for your NFL and PGA analysis. Of course, you can catch him in his work with DraftKings as well, and it's all guests. He appeared tonight on Game Night on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Reid, always appreciate the time.
All right, Josh, take care.
Always great to talk with Reid Fowler about the NFL and golf. Yeah, just to touch on the Masters real quick before we hit the break. Going into that tournament, I was at least hoping for, expecting a tournament that was a little bit more competitive, right? A little bit more well-rounded, a little bit less one-sided. And it felt like, as I told him, I said, when Friday night came around and I saw the scoreboard and I saw who was leading, and we've had it in the studio for the last few days, Thursday, Friday. So, while you're working, you get to, peer over the soundboard and look at the television screen and see what's going on. It just felt like there was a vibe that Dustin had taken control of the tournament. And it seemed like once Saturday came around, you looked at the leaderboard and you're thinking, my goodness, like, is anybody going to catch this guy? And he just kept pulling away. So, good for him. The guy is obviously, overcome a lot of people's expectations and a lot of people's opinions and a lot of people's ideas about, is this guy a legitimate guy? Is he a legitimate champion? Is he one of these guys, like Ernie Els, who's just going to win a bunch of titles but not actually win a major, and they finally won 1 major. And then it was, can he do more than that? He's getting too old. He's 30-something years old. And so for me, at least, it was nice to see a guy prove himself a little bit and have a good day. You know what I mean? So that's at least my perspective on the major. I wasn't really too upset or whatever about, Tiger or whoever else playing. There was a part of me that was kind of happy that Bryson DeChambeau got humbled a little bit. He was walking around acting like he was, the best thing since sliced bread, but aside from that, I think that he needed to be humbled a little bit. He needed to get a big taste of humble pie and realize that, he's not as great as he thinks he is. He's still on the come up. He's not arrived yet. 609-403-0973 is the text. We'll get back to the text about the Eagles, Doug Pederson, Carson Wentz, the NFL, and more. 609-403-0973 on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. This is Game Night. I'm Josh Hennig. This is 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night, being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. We'll get to my accountability on my Football Friday picks in just a bit. Text board is open, 609-403-0973 from the PlaySugarHouse.com. Text board 609-403-0973. Of course, if you miss any part of the show, miss my conversation with Reid, Fowler, or anything else on Game Night, you can catch the Game Night podcast each and every night after the show right there on 97.3 ESPN.com or the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea City. Get to the text board here. Dan from EHT chimes in with a couple different points, so I'll try to get to a couple of your points here, Dan and EHT. I think you always appreciate you texting and joining the show. The first comment he brings up is, remember Orlando Scandrick a year or two ago saying the Eagles are full of themselves? Maybe he was on to something. I can't agree with that one bit, because Orlando Scandrick was full of himself. He was looking for TV time. He was looking for his extra 15 minutes of fame. He was a jilted lover. He was I'm mad at my ex for breaking up with me, so I'm going to go on social media and blast them. Except Orlando Scandrick did it with his ex-employer, and he went on national television and tried to go blast mode on the Eagles, which made him look even worse because he came off as ridiculous. So just because a broken clock is right twice a day doesn't mean I depend on it for time. And that's what Orlando Scandrick is. I'm not depending on him and his opinion. I'm not giving him any credibility just because there may have been some truth hidden in that vomit he was throwing out there on television. There's one thing to criticize or critique somebody in the aftermath of no longer working with them. It's another thing to air your grievances like you're a spurned ex and you're just so mad about it. So I got no time for giving Orlando Scandrick credit. Now, the other thing that Dan from EHC brought up is I think the Giants might actually be good. They should have beat the Eagles in the first matchup, should have beat Dallas, should have beat the Bucs. Jason Garrett is actually doing a good job as offensive coordinator, Joe Judge as head coach. Now, see, that's a point I'm a little bit more on board with because, I was thinking a lot about this last night and today, and I wasn't sure how to, really get to it, but I'm glad you brought this up. There's a part of me that says the Eagles lost the game, but the Giants also won the game, and we have to give them credit for evolving and growing as a football team. They have really come a long way from the miserable team that we all thought they were at the beginning of the year that lacked talent, that obviously had the worst roster of all the NFC East teams. And now without Saquon Barkley, they're winning some games. They're competitive, and I think you got to give the coaching staff a lot of credit. You mentioned Joe Judge. Joe Judge was a bit of a punchline because nobody outside of the football diehards knew who he was. Most people weren't sure where he came from. They made fun of him a lot because of his name, because the judge arrived in New York, some of the headlines in the New York papers and tabloids. But he's done a great job, despite his quirks and his oddness. Obviously, what makes him different is what makes him a productive coach so far. And Jason Garrett has really grown from his 8-8 year after year in Dallas to being a very good offensive coordinator, a guy who's getting the best in many ways out of Daniel Jones. And I'm not going to sit here and act like Daniel Jones is anything special, but Garrett's probably getting more out of them than many other coaches probably could get out of him. So you got to give Garrett credit. You got to give the Giants credit. Jones had no turnovers yesterday. The Giants had a great game plan of taking advantage of the Eagles' linebackers and manipulating the Eagles. The Eagles have a history of not being able to handle misdirection and movement, and the Giants took full advantage of that. And the Eagles had no adjustments, no answers for the Giants, and the Giants just kept doing the same thing over and over again. If it's not broke, don't fix it. That's what the Giants did yesterday. So, yes, you do have to give the Giants credit, Dan, from EHT, but it doesn't void the Eagles of the responsibility of you're the better football team. You're supposed to be better. You're supposed to play better, and you didn't. So it's a problem, and it's something that I think we shouldn't let go of when it comes to the Eagles. Of course, that's on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. 609-403-0973. Place your legal sports bets at PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. Match your first deposit up to $250. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 609-403-0973. Want to squeeze in a text before we get out of here. Accountability time with the picks. We went 3-3. So our first non-winning weekend in about 4 weeks. Now, we didn't lose, but we didn't win. Remember how many times I've told you guys about how many of my losses, probably half of them, are because, I got a little carried away. Ego got in the way. I was complaining about Wentz and his ego, right? Well, let's hit the 3 losses first. I was so anti-Notre Dame this year that I haven't given them many chances. And they proved me wrong. I thought they'd have a letdown game at Boston College. And Boston College kept it close for a while. But, man, the Notre Dame defense really stepped up. They won 45-31, so Boston College did not cover the plus 12. I got to give Notre Dame credit. They are a real contender in college football right now. The other game that I totally whiffed on was Arkansas plus 17 at Florida. I totally miscalculated how good Florida's offense would be and how difficult it would be for Arkansas to keep up. I thought without Kyle Pitts, the Gators offense take a step back. Their best receiver, well, Kyle Trask basically told me and everybody else, we're not taking any steps back. We're not letting up our foot off the pedal at all. We're full steam ahead. And Kyle Trask made a great argument on Saturday to be among the Heisman Trophy candidates this year. What are some of the picks we did get right? Miami plus 2.5 at Virginia Tech. Miami won 25-24. Wild game. Incredible win by Miami to get that win on the road. Of course, now they're not going to be able to play this weekend because of COVID-19 protocols. Bit of a disappointment. I had South Carolina at Mississippi. Mississippi minus 11.5. Mississippi ran away with that game in the end. I always felt that Ole Miss just had more offensive firepower, and they proved it. Matt Corral, under Lane Kiffin's guidance, has been absolutely incredible. He had 4 touchdowns and 4 incompletions on Saturday. Thanks to that loss, South Carolina fired Will Muschamp. Talk about not worrying about the money. South Carolina is eating about $11+ million in a buyout to get rid of Will Muschamp. That's how disappointed they are in him. So, also one more, we hit the over in the South Florida at Houston game. That game got almost 80 points altogether. I mean, told you, 2 bad defenses. You got 2 bad defenses, you take the over on the points. It's a pretty simple formula I got going on. So overall, we are 46-28 on the year. Not too bad, though. We'll try to do better this coming Friday on a Football Friday. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. Don't forget tonight, Monday Football. Nick Foles and the Bears versus the Vikings at 7:30.